The stuff you're learning in school is not directly transferable to the real world. So it doesn't actually matter if you get a 70 or 65 in school because you're not going to use it. And to me, that's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. Like, it would be great if the things you learned was actually things that you could leverage in real life.
In this episode, I'm talking to Navid Nathoo, co-founder of the Knowledge Society, TKS. They're like a Y Combinator, but instead of building unicorn companies, they're building unicorn people. We're going to talk about how they build relationships with companies like McKinsey, Microsoft, Google, SpaceX. Some of their programs are actually taught out of these campuses, and how he has over 2,500 alumni in over 200 cities, barely spends anything on marketing. Incredible, considering the average tuition is around $10,000 per year for them, and students usually are enrolled in 1 to 3 year programs. We're going to figure out how he did all of this, and if he can't answer a question, we both have to take a shot of hot sauce. Wish me luck, Martians. Hope you enjoy this one. Welcome, Martians. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing on Mars. Today, we got the CEO and founder of TKS, Navid Nathoo. Basically, this company, it's incredible. They're basically like a Y Combinator, but instead of building kind of unicorn companies that we're all so used to, they're building unicorn people starting at a very young age. They've worked with organizations like the United Nations, Google, Amazon, SpaceX, and the list goes on. We'll get into all of that. They have over 2,500 alumni in over 200 cities. They've been around since 2016. Super excited to talk to Navid. Navid, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. You're where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from the land of the nomads in Medellin.
Land of the nomads. Okay, I thought that was going to be our first hot sauce question right off the bat. Yeah. Navid, thank you so much for coming on. What you've built is truly incredible. I'm excited to dive into that. You've worked with amazing companies. First of all, tell us a little bit about your background. And just kind of how your background led you to founding TKS.
I mean, background on paper on LinkedIn, if you look it up, it'll say, I've done international work at places like Grameen Bank, AKDN, in a bunch of different countries around the world, from Bangladesh to to Central Asia to East Africa. And then I also built a tech company. All you techies listening, did a cloud security company, did some AI stuff. Sold it to Box.com in 2014. And then, was just kind of in the tech space. But ultimately, my brother asked me this question while, he was he was working at McKinsey at the time. He was in Australia, visited me in the Bay Area. And he's just like, what would we do if we had $10,000 in the bank? Or $10 billion in the bank, not 10,000. What would we do if we had 10 billion in the bank?
Yeah.
Because like at 10 billion, you're not thinking about what you would buy. Like you could try your hardest and it's very difficult to spend 900 million. You could buy the cars and the big houses and everything, and you still have 9.9 billion left. And at that point, it's like, well, how do you want to spend your time? And for us, it was, we want to try to solve the world's biggest problems. We started making a list, like, what are the world's biggest problems? And we started bucketing it. You got agriculture, you have healthcare, you have education, energy, shelter, so on and so forth. And you get all these problems under those buckets, and there's hundreds of problems. And we're like, fuck, there's so many problems here. And so he's like, it would take us a lifetime to solve one, maybe two of these. If we solved 50,
exactly,
how would that have been? If we solved 50, how could we do that? And I was like, well, we probably need an army of people to go out there and like solve these big problems and like train them how to think from first principles and maybe use things like emerging technologies to solve problems that existing technologies and methods can't solve. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So, a month later, we basically launched TKS, and we're like, let's see if we can create unicorn people. Let's see if we can build the next like PayPal mafia times 10,000. How could we intentionally build people that will go on and solve problems, create an exciting future? And we've been kind of secretly, or not secretly, but quietly building that for the last 6.5 years. And we work with teens, right? 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. And that's not sexy to talk about. In the mainstream, you want to hear about Google, Stripe, SpaceX, Tesla, Elon, Twitter, but no one's talking about like, oh, that 14-year-old kid using machine learning to detect breast cancer, or, that 15-year-old kid using a decentralized app for land registry in Kenya. Like it's not as mainstream and exciting. But what is exciting is now what these alumni are doing 6 years later. Our oldest alumni is like 23 years old. And I just released an update on my kind of like personal Substack newsletter that there's like, I don't know, over 28 companies now by alumni. Again, the oldest is 23. So you have to assume they're like 19, 20, 21. 23. They've raised over 80 million.
Right.
They've joined companies that have raised, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's just crazy to see the trajectory. Like it's not success to me. It's like, it's more trajectory. So when you intentionally train people with the right mindsets, which is a big part of TKS, real skills, exposure to emerging tech, what do they end up doing? Anyways, that's like TKS and kind of what I do. But you guys want to know about marketing. So let's talk about marketing.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And by the way, TKS stands for the Knowledge Society. And it basically, you're like a human accelerator. Like you said, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, they come into this program. And it's kind of like they still have their regular schooling, right? They still go to regular schooling, but then they use this as like to supplement all the learnings.
Yeah, they go to school and it's like Olympic level training. If you're trying to be an Olympic level swimmer, you still go to high school, but then you go to your Olympic level coach after, you go to your Olympic level pool after, a gym or whatever. This is Olympic level ground for like innovators, inventors, scientists, founders, whatever the case is, right? So that's kind of how we think about TKS. And there's an application interview process. So if you're listening and you know kids that are like 13 to 17 years old who are not getting what they need from school, tks.world. Tell them to check it out and they can apply if it's something that they get excited about.
Okay. So yeah, we'll get into all of that. And I also want to, as you know, on the show, we want to dig into the real secrets of how you grew your company, how you got 2,500 alumni and working with Google, SpaceX. That's incredible. I want to know all the secrets. So in the show, we always start off with a little tradition. We always start with a shot of hot sauce. You have already prepared your shots of hot sauce, my understanding. You prepared it all for you. You got 3 shots prepared just in case we make it all the way through. I have a shot of, I don't have a shot glass today. I have a spoon for the last couple of episodes for people that have been watching. I'm going to just pour a little bit of a dab. This is, I'm in Korea, so this is one of the most popular Korean hot sauce right now. And we're just going to give it a shot. So we'll start off the show this way. And I will be careful with what I ask you.
Let's go.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. I don't have water. I don't know why I made that mistake. All right. So first thing, let's understand TKS a little bit. Tell me about how the program works right now. You guys are building unicorn people. You're taking kids that are young, 13 to 16, and you're turning them into like the next Elon Musk of the world, or the next Jeff Bezos of the world, or what have you. How do you guys do it? What does the program look like?
So initially it was inspired by startup accelerators. So my last company, we went through 2 startup accelerators, Alchemist, which is a pure B2B accelerator. So it was great for us because we were a data security, cloud security company. And then we also went through Techstars. And then, a ton of my friends went through like YC, AngelPad, so many other accelerators, 500. And I was like, if you can create unicorn companies from 0 to billions through that model, there's probably something there. And so we took a lot of that as the base for what TKS is today. That was kind of a lot of the foundation. So what does that mean? Cohorts. So first, students are in cohorts of about 30 to 40 students. We find that's the sweet spot. You actually don't want less students per teacher. We don't have teachers. They're more like coaches or directors, program directors. You want more students because you want to maximize serendipity and relationship building amongst these like really ambitious, driven people. So we have a bunch of cohorts.
Right.
Every program has about 3 cohorts, 30 to 50 students. We have in-person programs in Toronto, Vancouver, Ottawa. Before COVID, we were in New York, Vegas, LA, Boston. Now we're launching Austin, Seattle, and relaunching New York again right now, as well as Calgary. And then we have plans to launch European, like a bunch of European cities next year. and then a bunch of Asian cities. So we're looking at Seoul, we're looking at Singapore, we're looking at Japan. And we already have students from all these places. So now it's just launching in-person programs there because they're in our virtual programs. And it's 10 months. So it's a 10-month long accelerator. And that's the amount of time we found is what you need to both grow mentally and build real projects. So there's no fluff in TKS. Like, you're actually building real projects. You're creating things, as well as training your mindset. So every week we have a mindset of the week. We're training things like anti-fragility, stoicism, done is better than perfect, think 10x, all of those things that you're never really taught and every successful founder knows about. We actually train them. And so that, I think, is probably like a huge differentiator and key mover from TKS and a lot of other orgs, as well as teaching young people how to network. How do you actually find the right people to guide you and mentor you when you get deep enough into a topic? So if you're working on machine learning, like this one student, our alumni now, Arnav, he's working on complex machine learning stuff. He kept finding mentors to push him and push him. Eventually, he found his way at getting mentors from OpenAI, and now he's the youngest employee at OpenAI. With him and Sam Altman know each other, and they're talking and all of those pieces. And so it is about giving young people kind of the skills and methods on how to get there so they can build their own path and have that high standards, right? If you're going to work in machine learning, go to OpenAI. If you're going to work on nuclear fusion, go to General Fusion or ITER or something like that. And so helping them understand that the ceiling is not school. The ceiling is not 100%. The ceiling is not Harvard. Like, you can go very far. You just have to break through that mental blocker, we often have for ourselves.
And is the goal, because I you talked about education. A lot of people say that, the current education system is broke. So you got student debt kind of being at record high levels and all that. Is the goal still, do you still push these students then to seek further education after the program? Or if they're already building and already doing things, you just encourage them to continue down that path? If they're already building, ML models. I saw some of your interviews, like some of the kids are actually like building things that adults can't build even when they're 30 or 40. It's incredible. So do you just kind of tell them to continue to pursue those dreams?
Okay, so it is a controversial take, the whole thing on university. Big piece from my side is I highly encourage going to university and post-secondary, as long as there's two rules. The first one is you move out of your city. So the biggest part of university, it is a personal growth experience, and you're going to meet a lot of interesting people and build friendships and maybe find your life partner or something. So there's a lot of valuable aspects of university outside of just the education. I think most people would agree that the education of most universities, depending on the major you're in, is on the lower end of the reason why you should go to university. And until that gets decoupled out, it's probably still the best bet to go. So the first thing I say is leave the city you're in. And the second one is go on an exchange program. So those are like the two biggest, pieces of advice I give to students. And then the ones that do drop out, very few do, but the ones that do drop out, they have like a real reason. So they've raised like $10 million for their company. Well, it doesn't make sense for them to be in school because they just raised 10 million, right? Alexander Wu is a good example of this from Utopia. Ben Nashman, who built Synex, they've all raised millions of dollars for their companies, and it just wouldn't have made sense for them to stay in university. And it was a hard decision, but ultimately they were really passionate about what they were building. They had a lot of capital support and a lot of mentors and advisors backing them to help them build, something successful. So yeah, the default path is university still. There's a lot of value to it. Of course, it can be better. I do have ideas, and I might actually build a better version at some point. But until that point, right now, it's the alternative is far worse, is what I'll say, for unstructured people, at least.
Yeah. And so like, as you mentioned, some of your alumni, they actually have gone on to raise money. And you also, you talk about, teaching them how to network, which I would love to get into later on. But is there a lot of support? Like, does CKS actually support these students when you see a good project? Do you say, hey, you know what, you should talk to X at SpaceX, or you should talk to Y at Google? Do those kind of things happen, or do these students really are just hustlers and they get it all done themselves?
Well, initially, so I would say Ben Nashman was the first one to start a company, first alumni. He started a company called Synex, which is building a ring or a medical device to detect your glucose levels and other blood metabolites non-invasively. So no blood. Okay, super exciting stuff. The technology is incredible. I don't know how much more I can say, but when he was initially starting to fundraise, it was just me and my brother, right, co-founders, brainstorming. Who were the best people to help you raise capital? We tapped into our networks, and we also started brainstorming. Who in the world would align with this? In those conversations, people like Naval came up. Cut scene. Naval is an investor in Synex, along with some other friends of ours from Radical Ventures and others that Ben found and rallied. And so what we did now is literally just this month, we launched a TKS investor program where now it's more formal that we help our alumni raise capital. And so we have a bunch of investor friendlies, about a list of 100 right now. And when we do have companies that we feel are ready for external capital, then we'll help facilitate that raise. Because when you're young, you're trained on product, you're trained on actually building, going heads down. And we train not to focus on vanity metrics. And so it's hard to play the game of raising money. It's a very different game. And so we will help on that. And if there are investors listening to this, reach out to me if you want to tap into that alum startup network, and we can involve you in the investor program.
Yeah, amazing. I might even reach out to you myself personally. Okay, so speaking of amount raised, one of the questions that we usually ask on the show is how much did your company raise? So I know, obviously TKS has grown to a certain level. You've gotten all this alumni and you work with big major companies. Have you guys raised any money at all?
All right. So I'm going to take a shot of this and then I'm going to explain why.
Oh, no. All right. I will, I'll do it with you.
Oh, you get a shot too.
I had a feeling that this is going to happen. Yeah, it makes it so that I got to be careful with the questions I ask. Okay. I didn't eat any food, so I'm just going to I'm still going to pour a full spoon, but. Oh, that is bad.
Now I want to know what this hot sauce tastes like. Okay. So the reason why I'm not going to answer that, we did raise a little bit at the beginning, but it was never to raise it. The model we actually thought we were going to go forward with at the beginning was very different. We thought we were actually going to build physical spaces like WeWork and transform what like the future of education was going to look like, how Google did with the office spaces, what WeWork did with workspaces. How can we do that with education spaces and host our own programs there? That's not the right way to go.
Right.
We had to really just focus on what we were good at, which was the programming. And so we ended up focusing, not being it's capital intensive. And so we scale differently. We're not like a tech company either. And so the revenues we get and the way we manage our expenses and capital is just fundamentally different than a venture-backed company, very different than my last company.
Right. And so how does it work? Because it's so, you guys have expanded to so many cities. Do you share office spaces? You go to like a WeWork, or you use Google's office or like some of your partners' offices, or how does it work?
Yeah, we partner with great companies. So, what's interesting? I was driving by these schools. It was summer, and I was in Toronto, and I was just driving by this road, and I kept seeing like schools pop up, and I was like, these schools are empty.
Yeah.
What if they subletted their space? Like, who would take it? Maybe startups. And then immediately I was like, no startup would want to work out of a school. And then immediately I was like, holy shit, no startup would ever want to work out of school. Yet we're like forcing young people to work out of these places every single day, 8 to 4 or whatever the case is for 12 years. That's crazy to me, And so like, we don't host our programs out of schools or any type of things like that. In Toronto, we've hosted our program out of McKinsey. Then we hosted it we did the WeWork space. Wow. In New York. We were out of Microsoft at the Times Square office. Now in Toronto, I want to shout out Sensei Labs. Awesome guys, awesome organization, great space. So just different places. We just try to find great spaces, great people, great organizations that are aligned with us and give students a real experience of what it's like to work out of a innovative workspace, because that's what gets your creative juices flowing and makes it real. Classrooms aren't real, right? That's where memorizations happen. That's where teachers give you information. We want to put people into the real world, and then so they understand like the stuff you're learning here is real because you're in a real office where real people actually build.
Yeah, and look, I don't think you and I have anything too much against the school systems. I mean, we have opinions about it, but look, the reality is the school systems and a lot of the institutions where schooling happens, all this stuff was built predated 200 years ago, sometimes 100 to 200 years ago. A lot of technology has evolved now, right? Payphones now don't exist. Newspapers now are almost dead. Everything's online now, so things have to change and things have to evolve. It doesn't mean that the idea of education is wrong in itself, but it's just evolving, right, and moving with the times. So yeah, no, I totally agree with that. All right, and so you guys have raised a little bit of money, but most of it seems bootstrapped because you said that you're very tight on money. Where are you guys right now in terms of like your marketing channels? Because this is a marketing podcast. How did you guys grow from 0 to 2,500 students, from 0 to working out of McKinsey's office and Microsoft? Do you guys spend a lot on marketing activities?
So I think most founders and marketers will know at the early stages you don't have budget, right? So you have to be super scrappy. Now pair that with, I was never in the education space. I came from the tech world in the Bay Area. And so literally for the first program, my brother and I found ourselves in malls with these like cards being like, we're looking for young, curious, ambitious people who are interested in self-driving cars and the future of digital currency, Bitcoin, all this stuff. This is 2016. We're literally walking up to kids, giving them these cards. I'll tell you right now, that doesn't work. Don't go up to kids in malls saying you're looking for
Did you guys
doesn't work.
And ended up in different types of institutions.
You gotta hustle. And I think that's like a key trait of great marketers is they hustle. Before you figure out what works, you've probably done 10 things that doesn't work. And you're embarrassed by those things. I'm embarrassed by going to the malls, but you have to do it. Because what ended up working for the first year is one of our family friends who's a parent of a kid who was 13 years old was like, hey, what if I call a couple of my friends, or not a couple, but a group of my friends to my house and you can do like an information session, right? This is like pre-TKS. Remember, there's no success stories, none of that stuff. And so she invited a bunch of people over, and it was really about relationship. And that was my biggest learning. When you're getting something from 0 to 1, I think relationships are the most important thing because they're trusting you. They're trusting the person,
100%.
Not really the product. If the value prop's not clear, right? And so create those relationships first, and then you can kind of scale. But I can tell you that the relationship piece is always the best one. Like, as a marketer, you hear about referrals. Referrals and recommendations are the best source of marketing. And that is basically an extension of relationships, right? You're shortcutting relationships. When you get a warm introduction to someone, that is kind of like a referral or recommendation. But it transfers your relationship and your clout from someone. And I think if you can figure out and crack how you can transfer a relationship at scale, you'll get insane growth numbers, especially if your ticket price is high, because the higher costs you have to something, it relies on a high level of relationship, which is why when you go to a B2B company, you have a bunch of outbound salespeople, and you need people to create relationships. If you're a company like TikTok or like a B2C, it's less about relationships and more about like just showing the value prop as quickly as possible, getting the download, getting the click. And so understanding where you are on that spectrum helps you figure out, how much do I need to focus on personal relationships? Because if you're a B2B company charging 10K plus a year for your product, I think relationships are important. And if you're expecting just to, get quick ads out there and getting people to sign up and click, you might be disappointed with your conversion rates.
No, that's totally true. And when we've spoken with over 35 founders now on Marketing on Mars podcast, companies ranging from $10 million in sales, annual sales, to over $200 million in sales. We got Microsoft on the show as well, and so and B2B. What I'm hearing is B2B at the end of the day, and we all know this, it's P2P. It's a person to another person. There are businesses and logos behind the story, but at the end of the day, it's a person shaking hands with another person. And so you got to connect with people on a personal level. And so I love the fact that you started off with relationships. I think that was a great way to start. And you probably saved a lot of money Like if you had just started running ads and try to connect with kids on TikTok and trying to sell your courses, that, good luck with that. You probably would have spent $30,000 very easily, right? But I think that was very good. So that was the first student and the first success story. And then did you just kind of from there just leverage from that group and start expanding out, or did you do any kind of programs with other schools to try to expand to other cities?
Yeah. So the mental model we kind of used is, where is our leverage point? So where is our audience, and how do we focus on a leverage point where most of our audience is attached to? Obviously, for education, that is schools and youth organizations. And so
Right.
what we started doing is we started building relationships with schools. I started getting to know the principals and guidance counselors at different schools, understanding what the gaps were in what they felt their students needed, especially their more driven, ambitious students, because TKS isn't for everyone. So we had to really understand our user, and understand what the gap was, and then position it in a way where it was exciting. Because again, remember, there's no clear results. Education is a very long-term game when you think about it, right? And so building relationships was key.
Right.
We found our leverage points, which was schools, but specifically the forward-thinking people in those schools that were thinking about, how do we expose our students to the future, to emerging tech and sciences, to this world of entrepreneurship and scale. Because right now the school system, hot take, the school system, I don't think is an education system. It's a filter system. And so if you think about it as a filter system, if we start calling it a filter system, we start realizing that it's not optimized to educate. There is education that happens, but it's actually optimized to filter.
Right.
And I describe it as a time-based filter. So you're in grade 9 for a year, and then what happens? You go to grade 10. How do you advance to grade 11? You stay there for a year and you advance to grade 11. So it's time-based. There's no video game out there where you just have to play it for X amount of time to get to the next level. You have to achieve something to move to the next level, right? And as you do that, you have to build the skills to beat the boss in the next level. Our education system isn't really like that. It's time-based, and then during that time, you're taking tests where you're getting filtered. And whether you get a 70% or a 90%, it doesn't matter. You move forward. And this is one of the things—
You still move forward.
This is one of the things that Sal Khan talks about, the concept of mastery. If we really had an education system, it would only let you progress when you understood the concept, right? So only if you get a 95, then you can move to the next thing. Otherwise, you have to keep making sure you understand the content. Now, the thing that we don't talk about enough, even though everyone knows it, is the stuff you're learning in school is not directly transferable to the real world. So it doesn't actually matter if you get a 70 or 65 in school, because you're not going to use it. And to me, that's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. It would be great if the things you learned from, 5 years old to 18 years old, right, was actually things that you could leverage in real life, that you could transfer in real life. And one of the kind of mental models I have and key metrics or just general thoughts I have for valuable things to learn is things that compound. So what are things that actually compound on top of each other? And what we find is when we look at our current kind of curriculums is they're non-compounding. You don't necessarily need to know logs to know calculus, or you don't necessarily need to know grade 10 biology to know grade 11 biology. There's some things that compound a little bit, but not necessarily. And so I think the first step is, one thing we are very conscious of in TKS is creating compounding systems. So everything you learn, every session compounds off each other, including our mindsets. So for example, we train something called boss mentality, right? I know I'm derailing from marketing a little bit, but I think mindsets are important even in marketing. We train boss mentality first,
for sure.
High standards. So high standards and boss mentality. With boss mentality is almost like a strong level of confidence in yourself. This is what a lot of people, especially young people, are lacking. Then once you have that, then you can train other pieces like anti-fragility. And so understanding what are even the mindsets that compound, what are the skills that compound, the knowledge that compounds. And then ultimately at the end of whatever education system you're building, you end up with a really strong output quality. And to me, that's the measure of a strong education system. How different is the output from the input and the student, right? The student input and the student output. And that's also why a lot of people have issues with university systems, because it is more or less a filter system. People celebrate getting in, right? And then how do you graduate? You just have to stay in. There's no like achievements to continue to move up the ladder once you get into a Harvard, for example. Once you get in, you're almost guaranteed graduating. And I think that narrative has to
Yeah.
change a bit because we're not maximizing human development and human potential. And as a result, I think we're leaving a lot of potential on the table. So anyways, I have a lot to say about that, but
yeah, no, it's very, very important, and if we do have time, I do want to dive more into the curriculum and learning about some of those key philosophies as well. I'm very curious about that. So going back, relationships was a huge driver in the beginning in terms of marketing for how you guys grew. What else did you guys do? Like some of the it seemed like you guys did a lot of guerrilla marketing tactics. You guys also reached out to schools, so it was all relationships. Anything else that you guys did, or was that mostly what you guys did? Just did a lot of door to door, a lot of booking meetings with those leverage points.
So I was listening to a podcast.
Was that kind of like the main thing?
I was listening to a podcast this morning with Toby, the founder of Shopify, and I like something he said. He's like, the most important thing is to make sure the most important thing is the most important thing. And that's what we did. You know, he framed it in a really cool way, and I like the way he framed it, and I shared that with our team today. But what's the most important thing for us?
Yeah.
It is getting high quality applications, because the person matters. And it's not because we want the smartest kid or the kid with the best grades. That's not it. It is student program fit. Because our program, if a lazy kid who just wants something on their resume joins TKS, they're not going to get much out of it. If a really curious kid that wants to like change the world or like cure cancer or make a dent in climate joins TKS, they're going to get a lot out of it. So how do we find those people? The issue we had with some previous marketing people we brought on is they were too focused on the KPI. They were too focused on application numbers. So what ended up happening is they would have so many clicks on their apply now link, but the conversion from that apply now to completed application was low, and completed application to actually high quality student was low. And then you look at why was low. Yeah. Because they put apply right on the front of our homepage that linked to the application. But if you're clicking apply on our homepage, you haven't even read the program and what the program's about. You don't know the cost. You don't know the duration. And so our customer support team was blowing up.
Yeah.
And so if you go on our website right now, there's no apply button on our homepage. And this was controversial. A lot of people in the company is like, how come there's no apply page? How come there's no apply page? And I was like, I don't want people to click apply. I want people to go to the program page first to know what they're getting into and then apply for it. And even though that's going to decrease our application numbers potentially, it's going to increase our high quality application number and our conversion metrics after they apply. And I think that's really important because a lot of people get stuck in these metrics, but understanding again, what is the most important thing, right? And to us, it was high quality students, high quality applications. And oftentimes, if you just focus on the number, you might be sacrificing other things that you're not even aware of. Like I mentioned, the student journey of actually reading the program page, knowing what this is actually about, and then applying.
How do most of the people find your website nowadays? What are the main channels?
There's a few. I'm super bullish, and I continue to be bullish on school partnerships and organizations. Right now, we're growing out that program. We're adding a lot of value to schools and organizations. So, for example, we have TKS Talks launching soon. We have speakers from TikTok, speakers from Tesla, SpaceX, like just really incredible people, Amazon, people that young people wouldn't normally get exposed to and schools don't have relationships with. So what we say is, we'll provide that, we'll fill that gap for you. Like you train, you focus on helping your students get great grades to go into university. We'll help them round it out on what's actually happening today in the world with real executives from these top companies. And so they love that because we can work together, right? The next area, and by the way, if there's anyone that runs like a school or youth org, obviously send me a message. The next big area is social media, because where are people today, especially young people? They're on social media. So if you go to our Instagram, you'll see in the past few months, we really upped our game in our content. So we hired a head of creative, we hired a head of communication, and we're really focusing on how do we create great content on our socials. Right now, we're about 12,000 followers. I told the team I want to 10x that by later this year, by November. How do we get to 100,000+ followers? And I think that's very doable because young people are on these social medias and they get distracted and they know it. They know they're looking at garbage content. How can we create high quality content that they want to come back to? How do we create content about ChatGPT? How do we create content about mindsets, about what other young people have done their age that inspire them to do more? And all this stuff's transferable to other companies, right? Like, how do you think about your social media? What's the purpose? Why do they stay? Why do they click follow? This is something my brother and I were talking about. What do we want to post that's authentic to us? And then why are people going to follow? Those are two separate things. If you just think about making people follow, you might end up posting things that are actually not on brand and don't align to your product or company. And for me, that was really important because we could be at 100,000 followers now if we just posted meme content and trends and all this stuff. But that's not authentic to us. So we want to stay authentic while getting, an increase in followership. But again, it's going back to the right followers. We don't care about any followers. We want the right followers that can develop and grow with us and eventually apply to our programs or tell their kids or tell their friends about TKS and have them kind of, get awareness and go through our program.
How much are you guys spending right now on just content creation right now? That must be like a huge percentage of your marketing budget.
So there's a breakdown because, people probably understand this, but if you don't, there's a big difference between content creation and then content boosting.
Yeah.
Right. So with creation, it's not as expensive because the reality is what trends now is not like high quality, highly produced videos. That's not what gets it today. It's actually just like these videos. And so we make sure it's good production quality and we train students on how to make good videos and we try to use good cameras, but the cost of production is not as high. The cost of creation is not as high anymore. You can probably find someone in Bali or in Malaysia or something like that, pay them a few $1,000s a month and have, a great creative person or designer or something like that. And it's really about the person. The person we have really aligns with our organization. I love working with him, and he understands what we're about. And so, we can iterate off each other and he gets the brand.
I totally agree.
But
yeah, gone are the days where you're spending, $15,000-$20,000 a month on video production. You can get it all done for like a couple of grand.
Yeah.
And the quality doesn't have to be, AAA gaming studio level or like, you're not trying to produce the next Superman movie. People want authenticity now. People want real.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we started this podcast and interviewing real CEOs and talking about things that are like you said in the very beginning, no fluff. There is no fluff. We're doing shots of hot sauce. I'm gonna be hiccuping and you and I might start sweating and all that stuff. That is real. Conversations are real, and I think that's what people can see through that. People can see through the authenticity. So it's good. You guys start there. You start with the brand in mind, and then you try to shape it to speak to the students, right? You don't start with what they want because otherwise it will just be meme content all day, right?
I think that's
so that's
that's the right way to think about it. And then my general kind of thought process is for marketers, going from 0 to 1 is where you need to be creative. But going from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100 is where you need to be iterative. And so the 0 to 1 is like, what type of zone do we want to be in? Is it like, selfie content? Is it interviewing random people in the gym content? You see all that stuff on social media, but like, what is the 0 to 1? What's the angle? And then when you figure out that angle, I think a really great marketer continues to iterate and looks at the numbers then. But from 0 to 1, it's less about the number. It's more about the brand. It's more about the vibe that you're giving off, what type of people you want to attract. And then that, creativity is really needed for that. But you don't need creativity for everything. I really think that creativity and iteration are a little bit on different spectrums, and so you want to be creative first, but then you want to, tone down the creativity and increase on changing little things. Like what's the font? What's the color? What's the angle?
It's constantly going back and forth. You can't just stick with one there's no like, you can't just do one thing, kind of like school. You can't just do the same thing and then progress to the next level. You have to, there's a
Yeah.
balancing act, right? So what kind of content works for you guys right now?
So for us,
What have you guys found?
we used to do like small thing. For example, our captions just used to be normal captions, and then we started outlining them with green or yellow, and we're testing that and like how that's more sticky. People watch that more to the end. The type of music that we use, mellow music doesn't work as well, but like putting trendy music on top of it that's high energy works pretty well. I think one of our highest
Mhm.
organic viewed content is one of our alumni actually showing her journey building a brain computer interface technology to control a car, like a remote control car with her brain. And then it's like cut scene.
Wow.
She's working at Neuralink,
Yes.
like Elon Musk company Neuralink, and showing that journey,
Yeah.
how in TKS she
Yeah.
started building that and now she's here. So
I saw that
you
one.
saw that, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like those types of things
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think work
Yeah.
really well because it's real. Like you said, it's authentic. It's not BS. It's not fluff. This is actually happening. And I think if you can really show how your product helps people and the value it gives, people will buy it. But if you have a shitty product that doesn't help anyone, then it's going to be, you're going to have to trick people. But if you have a great product that people actually like, that adds value to them, I think it's just how do you show that? And for us, it is showing our students and showing their journeys. And then another part of it is there's some content on the Instagram where like me and my brother are talking about the way we view education or the way we built TKS, because people want to see like what's different about this thing. It's very difficult at a surface level to understand why TKS is different, because for any company, they're going to bucket you.
Mhm.
You're an education company, you're a finance
Right.
company, you're a CPG company. But I think as a founder, you matter and your mindset matters. And for founder-led companies, you can share
Absolutely.
the story, right? Like founders can share stories, but if you're not a founder-led company, it's very difficult to share that story. And so we
Right.
try to share that story and again, try to build some level of a relationship to the viewers to be like, oh, I vibe with that, I resonate with that, that makes sense to me, I buy into that. And doing that authentically matters, right? Not with like a high production thing going on, but something that really shows like who we are and people
Yeah.
can get excited about.
Yeah. So this isn't your first startup. You've started a company before. This is your second or third startup?
Yeah, this is the second real company, I would say. The rest are more like,
Second real.
yeah, failures or projects. But
Well, so now you're over 5-6 years in to your startup journey. What have you? What do you think is the most important thing for 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 a startup and a founder? Because like 95% or more than 95% of startups fail. What do you think is like if you were to say like the number one thing, the number one tip you would give to other startup founders, what would you say?
understand the unit economics, because you only fail when you run out of money. One thing I used to tell a lot of the companies I mentored at Alchemist. So after I sold my last company, I joined Alchemist as a mentor and mentored a bunch of companies in the B2B space. And one of the things I told them after they raised a lot of money, I would see their product and I'd be like, this
Right.
is a shit product. And one of the things I started to think about was you're just prolonging death. If you raise money on a crappy product, you're prolonging death. And you can only fail when you run out of money. And sometimes it's better not to raise money because you can fail faster. If you raise money, it takes you a long time to fail, especially if you're working on something not valuable to people or not important.
Right.
And so you have to understand the economics and make sure that, there is capital there to keep moving forward. And if you do raise money, understand that you're either going to prolong death if you're raising money on a bad product, or the alternative is high pressure. So when you raise money, you either prolong death or you get high pressure or both. And one of the two things are going to happen after the runway is done. Either you dramatically scaled or you failed. That's it. Those are the only two options, in my opinion.
Yeah. And did you grow up in a family, like very entrepreneurial family? Because this is your second startup now. You seem to have very strong philosophies on, like great philosophies and like good mentor to all these students that are come through the program. What was your upbringing like?
I think upbringing is super important, especially
Yeah,
before podcasts and YouTube existed, because that was your only direct understanding of the world, right? You only had like one real data point. You go to
for
school, you see
sure.
a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Then you talk to your teacher, you don't know anything about their life, right? Like, I don't know if you ever ran into a teacher at the
Yep.
grocery store. It was the weirdest thing, right? Like the weirdest
The
thing.
weirdest thing. Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, this is a real person. Like I didn't realize that. And
Yeah.
so you actually don't meet any smart people until after university. Maybe you meet a smart prof, like smart
Yep.
adults, I should say, not smart people. But you don't really learn from anyone.
Yeah.
And so your main exposure is actually your parents and your family. So for me, that was really important. My dad and mom grew up in East Africa, and my
Yeah.
dad didn't even finish grade 9. Grade 9 African education. This is probably like equivalent to grade 4, grade 3 normal education,
Mm,
right? Then he got kicked
mm,
out. My mom also got kicked out. There was a bunch of political stuff. My dad moved to England. He just hustled. Like
mm.
my dad was a hustler and my grandpa was a hustler, and they just started businesses, and they did little things that were non-obvious things. Like when they were looking to buy a corner store, like a convenience store,
Right.
my grandpa was telling me a story.
Ah.
He's telling me a story about how he used to stand across the street for a week and count how many people actually went into the store. And then he would measure that with the information
Wow.
that the store owner was giving him when he wanted to buy it. Because he was like, I want to actually see how many people are coming. Can I increase the revenue per person coming into the store? Is the store owner lying to me that maybe there's less people actually coming in? And you put that extra work in.
Yeah.
And that mindset is important. Put that extra work. Don't be
Wow.
lazy. And I think people are lazy,
Exactly.
right? Just because we have new technologies and tools today doesn't mean you can relax more. It's like, no, go hard and use those things. Use those things as leverage, not to like chill. And so, from a
Yeah.
young age, it was very clear to me that like the traditional path was never the default path, because my dad never had a traditional job. Now, here's the thing.
Mm,
Today, I don't think that's necessarily an important thing, having an entrepreneurial parents, because you have podcasts to listen to, you have YouTube videos, you
yep.
can watch literally Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and all these people talk about their journeys anywhere. And so you can get influenced by these different places. And so I think the next generation of founders and entrepreneurs might not have a direct link to their parents being entrepreneurial, but I do think that that is the case for a lot of the current generation. And especially you hear a lot of immigrants being
Hmm.
entrepreneurial because they're literally leaving your country, not having any information about where you're going and starting up is an entrepreneurial mindset, right?
It's already, yeah, they're already entrepreneurs. They're growing their life in a new country from zero to
Exactly.
X. So I love it. I love it. And the story about your grandfather kind of reminds me of the marketer you hired, that they were doing well, but you were still looking at the numbers and you wanted to be done differently. So you guys moved a different route. Otherwise, you would have spent a lot of money on a lot of clicks that didn't convert, right? So I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah. Sometimes, especially new
Yeah.
marketers coming
Um,
into companies, the first question everyone always asks is like, what's currently been done? The problem is if you keep doing that, right? Like what you want to do is understand what's being done, but test new hypotheses and see if you can make it better. And if you're just continuing what already has been done, I think there's opportunity cost being left on the table.
well, I mean, one of the biggest issues with marketers is that there are so many metrics that aren't tied to revenue. It's like, oh, marketing, I'm just bringing leads. Well, no. What are the leads actually doing? What are the clicks and the leads actually trying to achieve in the end? It's revenue, and I think too many marketers kind of hide beside, and it's just how it was built. Different funnels and marketing being on top of the funnel. But at the end of the day, activities have to lead to revenue, and I think we're moving
And I
more
think it's
towards that.
important. I think
Um,
it's important for founders to interact with their marketing team to help them understand um, when to be okay with lower numbers. So, like I gave you the example of our brand,
right.
right? If founders are in touch with the marketing, because this is what people see when you think about TKS, all you know about TKS before you meet me or whatever, is what's on the website, what's on our socials. That's it. And that's marketing.
Right.
And so everyone will judge your
Mm,
company by what they see in an ad, by what they see in your copy, by what they see on your website. And so founders have to understand that really well,
100%.
because that's what the world is seeing. That's what the world will interpret. We just did a refresh of our website. I was so heavily involved in that refresh because I was like, this is our storefront. Like if we're a clothing store, this is the store. This is what people walk by and see that make people go into it. No one cares
Yeah.
about the quality of the clothes if they don't even walk into the store.
No.
Right. And that's the
No.
analogy.
Yeah.
You have to make sure your storefront is awesome so people can even go and touch the quality. If they're not even attracted to walk in the store, they're never going to get the quality of the clothing, right?
100%. Well, I think this does it for. We're nearing the end. Before we end off, what should our viewers look forward to for TKS? Let's say for the next 6 to 12 months. Any big announcements or big things coming up?
Big things. We're launching in new cities: Austin, Seattle, New York. If you're in those areas, hit me up. We're always looking for great mentors to mentor young people that need support. We're also hiring. So if you're ever thinking about education and you're like, I actually really like educating, but the school system was never for me, check out our open roles. Like we pay pretty well and the job is like super fun and is amazing. You're basically building unicorn people. So we're hiring a lot of on those roles, both our virtual programs and our in-person programs. The investor side. So if you do want to invest in alumni companies, now we have that program. So you can get updated on, what alumni are working on. And by the way, these are awesome companies. Like I'm not actually seeing much SaaS. I'm seeing a lot of like med tech companies. Like I mentioned Synex with the non-invasive glucose detection.
The Ring.
There's Mitra Biotech, which is working on detecting heart attacks proactively. So before you get a heart attack, being able to detect that using biomarkers in the blood, super interesting stuff. So like really, really cool startups that you might not necessarily see in the mainstream. And then what else? Oh yeah, and then
a lot of health tech, like just a lot of professors or a lot of demand in that area.
The big thing is understanding
just
like
based
what
on
are important problems to solve today, and a lot of important problems are actually health problems, and we have the technologies to tackle them. So, for example, CRISPR just cured cancer, leukemia, in this like 12 or 13-year-old girl a few weeks ago. It barely got any coverage, but it's like one of the most important things that happened recently. There was a big nuclear fusion breakthrough. Like we're moving away from the SaaS era and now we're moving into exponential tech era and starting to actually productize the exponential tech because it's getting to the point where we can use it. And we're seeing that with ChatGPT. It's not one of the first, but it is a large scale instance where the masses can leverage AI, right? And then lastly, the last thing I'll say is obviously apply, right? If you know young people who are driven, curious, who want to make impact, who want to be pushed, who want to grow, applications are open. So there's an application interview process, and it's not about this. Is why I tell kids.
And you said you take about 30. You take 30 or 40 students per year.
No.
You said
per cohort, and then we have about 3 cohorts per program. And we have multiple programs, so we have close, 800 to 1,000 students in the program this year. Next year, we're growing that a bit more and scaling new cities. So I wouldn't say it's easy to get in, but for the right person, they will be able to get in because they demonstrate the right mindset and intentions, right? So that's the big thing with that. Yeah, it's exciting.
Okay, well, thank you, Navid, for sharing your story. Incredible what you've done. You're changing education for young people. You're building unicorn people. Appreciate you coming on the show, and maybe next time we'll do it. If you ever come down to Vancouver, because you got a campus there, I'll show you some of the hot sauce.
You should interview some of the Vancouver students. You should go in with a mic and actually go in and interview some of the Vancouver students and do like a part 1.5 of this podcast. That'd be fun.
I would love to talk to some of the star students there. We'll connect. We'll connect on a different time. But appreciate your time today, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Cool.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you want to learn more about marketing, just hit that subscribe button and check out all the other videos we have with CEOs, CMOs, and founders. We post weekly here, so this way you won't miss any future episodes. Also, you can leave me a comment down below on what you think about this episode and also what else I can do or ask to make the show more fun for you. See you later.